The rusty church bell was still echoing across Millbrook Valley when Cornelius Ashworth dropped his hammer and sprinted toward the muddy riverbank. The little girl, no more than 7, had collapsed face first into the cattails, her threadbare dress soaked through. He'd been watching her through his workshop window for the past hour, noting how she'd been digging through the refuse pile behind Henderson's general store. "Easy there, little sparrow," Cornelius whispered, scooping her frail body into his calloused arms. Her lips were blue, skin paper thin over prominent ribs. When was the last time this child had eaten? Inside his modest cabin, he settled her on the worn leather sofa his grandfather had crafted. While she stirred back to consciousness, he ladled thick venison stew into his best ceramic bowl, the one his late wife, Millicent, had painted with wildflowers during their first winter together. "Mister?" The girl's voice was barely a whisper. Her enormous hazel eyes dominated a heart-shaped face framed by tangled auburn curls. "Name's Cornelius, but folks call me Corny. What's yours, little sparrow? Isadora?" She accepted the bowl with trembling hands, then devoured the stew with desperate efficiency. "My mama's gonna worry. She told me to find food while she was working." Something cold twisted in Cornelius's gut. At 32, he'd seen enough of the world beyond Millbrook Valley to understand what working might mean for a desperate widow. 3 years had passed since cholera claimed his Millicent, leaving him childless and hollow. This little girl's hunger awakened something protective he'd thought buried with his wife. "Where's your mama now?" he asked gently. "The widow's house." Isadora's cheeks flushed crimson. "She says it's temporary, but ... The widow's house. Every man in the valley knew Madame Cordelia's establishment at the forest's edge, where desperate women earned coin through means the church ladies pretended not to discuss. Cornelius had never darkened its doorway. His grief ran too deep for such distractions, but he understood the desperation that drove women there. After Isadora finished eating, he packed a cloth satchel with bread, dried apples, and salt pork. "For your mama," he explained. "And this." He pressed $2 silver into her palm. "Tell her there's honest work at the mill if she wants it. I know the foreman." Isadora stared at the coins as if they were magical artifacts. "Why are you helping us?" Because kindness was all Cornelius had left to offer a world that had taken everything from him. Because this child's hunger reminded him of his own, not for food, but for purpose, for family, for reasons to wake each morning. "Sometimes folks just need help," he said simply. An hour after Isadora skipped toward the forest path, clutching the satchel against her chest, Cornelius heard unfamiliar footsteps on his porch. Through the window, he glimpsed a figure in a deep green cloak approaching his door. When she knocked 3 soft, deliberate raps, his heart hammered against his ribs with an intensity that caught him completely off guard. The woman who stood on Cornelius's threshold stole his breath entirely, even wrapped in the modest cloak. Her beauty was undeniable, raven black hair cascading past her shoulders, sapphire eyes that seemed to hold both vulnerability and strength, full lips curved in a tentative smile. She was perhaps 25, with the kind of face that belonged in oil paintings, not on his humble doorstep. "You're the man who helped my daughter." Her voice carried a slight accent he couldn't place, perhaps French, or maybe just refined education. "I'm Valentina." Cornelius found himself tongue-tied for the first time in years. "She's a good child. You should be proud." Valentina's smile wavered. "Pride is a luxury I can't afford these days." She glanced toward the forest path. "Isadora told me what you said about work at the mill. The offer stands." He stepped aside. "Would you like to come in? It's getting cold." Inside his cabin, Valentina moved with fluid grace, her cloak falling back to reveal a simple but well-fitted burgundy dress. She was more beautiful than any woman had a right to be, But Cornelius found himself captivated by something deeper. The way she checked the corners of the room like someone accustomed to danger. How her fingers worried the fabric of her skirt. The fierce protectiveness that flashed in her eyes when she mentioned Isadora. Why? She asked suddenly. Why help strangers? Cornelius poured coffee from the pot, perpetually warming on his stove. My wife always said kindness creates more kindness. Figured I'd test the theory. Your wife is wise. Cholera took her 3 winters back. Valentina's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence, sipping coffee as evening shadows lengthened. Cornelius learned that Valentina's husband had died in a railroad accident, leaving her with debts that consumed everything. She'd come to Millbrook Valley seeking work but found only rejection, except from Madame Cordelia. I won't pretend I don't know what you've been doing, Cornelius said carefully, but that doesn't define you. Valentina's laugh held no humor. Doesn't it? I'm a fallen woman, Mr. Ashworth. Decent folks cross the street to avoid me. Then they're fools. The words came out more forcefully than intended. You're a mother doing whatever it takes to survive. That's not falling, that's fighting. For a moment, Valentina stared at him as if he'd spoken in a foreign tongue. Then, unexpectedly, tears gathered in her sapphire eyes. When did you last hear those words? Cornelius asked gently. I can't remember. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition perhaps of 2 souls carrying similar burdens. Cornelius felt a stirring he thought died with Millicent. Not just physical attraction, but something deeper. Valentina represented possibility, the chance to build rather than merely survive. The mill job is real, he said. Bookkeeping. The pay's decent, and there's a cottage that comes with it. Small, but clean. Valentina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What would you want in return? Nothing. Just the chance to see you and Isadora safe. She studied his face intently, searching for deception or hidden motives. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded slowly. I'll take the job. 3 weeks later, Cornelius found himself inventing excuses to visit the mill office where Valentina worked. She'd proven remarkably capable, transforming the foreman's chaotic records into organized ledgers that actually balanced. More importantly, the haunted look had begun fading from her eyes. Papa Corny! Isadora launched herself at him as he approached the small cottage behind the mill. The title had emerged naturally after their second meeting. Isadora seemed to crave a father figure as much as Cornelius yearned for a child to dote upon. How's my favorite sparrow? He swung her up, marveling at how much healthier she looked. Regular meals had filled out her cheeks and put shine back in her auburn curls. Mama's teaching me to read, Isadora announced proudly. Want to see? Inside the cottage, Valentina looked up from where she sat darning socks. The domestic scene struck Cornelius like a physical blow, not painful, but overwhelming in its rightness. This was what he'd lost with Millicent's death, what he'd never expected to want again. She's a quick learner, Valentina said, smiling. As Isadora demonstrated her newfound skills with a worn primer, their evening routine had developed organically. Cornelius would arrive after work, often carrying small gifts, wildflowers, interesting stones, carved wooden toys he'd crafted in his workshop. They'd share supper, then sit by the fire while Isadora practiced letters or played with her collection of treasures. Tonight felt different, charged with unspoken tension. After Isadora fell asleep in her small bedroom, Cornelius and Valentina found themselves alone on the cottage's tiny porch, watching fireflies dance above the mill pond. I've been thinking about what happens next, Valentina said quietly. Cornelius's heart clenched. Are you leaving? No. She turned to face him fully. I'm thinking about staying permanently, but I need to know ... She paused, gathering courage. What are your intentions, Cornelius? The direct question caught him off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Valentina had learned not to leave important things unsaid. Honorable ones, he said carefully. I care about you. Both of you. More than I should after such short acquaintance. But you deserve better than a widowed blacksmith with calloused hands and limited prospects. Valentina laughed, the sound rich and genuine. You think I'm some delicate flower? Cornelius, I've done things I'm not proud of to keep my daughter fed. I don't need wealth or status, I need a good man who'll love us both. The vulnerability in her voice undid him completely. Without conscious thought, Cornelius reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Her skin was soft despite her recent hardships, and he felt calluses on her palms from mill work. I do love you, he admitted. Both of you. I have since that first day. Valentina's sapphire eyes reflected starlight. Then what are we waiting for? When she leaned closer, Cornelius met her halfway. Their first kiss was tentative, exploring, then deeper as 3 weeks of careful restraint finally broke. She tasted of coffee and hope, and when she pulled away, both were breathing hard. Marry me, Cornelius whispered against her forehead. Yes, no hesitation, no conditions. Just a single word that changed everything. The wedding preparations consumed Millbrook Valley with surprising enthusiasm. Despite Valentina's past at the widow's house, the townspeople had watched her transformation, how she'd thrown herself into honest work, how she'd become a devoted mother, how Cornelius had come alive again after years of lonely grief. Never seen you smile so much, commented Jonas Fletcher, the mill foreman, as he helped Cornelius repair the church pews for the ceremony. That woman's good medicine for you. Cornelius couldn't deny it. These past 6 weeks had been the happiest he'd known since Millicent's death. Valentina challenged him intellectually, matched his dry humor, and showed genuine interest in his metalworking craft. More importantly, she'd helped him understand that loving again didn't diminish his love for his first wife. It honored it. The wedding dress nearly caused a scandal. Valentina had sewn it herself from cream-colored silk somehow. Acquired through mysterious means, Cornelius suspected she'd sold her few remaining pieces of jewelry. The gown was elegant but modest, with long sleeves and a high neckline that satisfied even the most conservative church ladies. Mama looks like a princess, Isadora whispered as they prepared in the cottage. She wore a new blue dress that Cornelius had commissioned from the seamstress, complete with ribbon sash and tiny pearl buttons. Standing at the altar, Cornelius felt his throat tighten as Valentina walked down the aisle. Alone her pride wouldn't allow him to give her away like property. She moved with quiet dignity, her dark hair crowned with wildflowers Isadora had gathered. When their eyes met, her smile contained such pure joy that several women in the congregation dabbed at tears. Reverend Whitmore, despite his initial reservations about marrying a reformed woman, seemed genuinely moved as he spoke the familiar words. Do you, Cornelius Ashworth, take Valentina as your lawfully wedded wife? I do. The words came from his heart, not just his lips. And do you, Valentina, take Cornelius as your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Her voice carried absolute certainty. When Cornelius kissed his bride, the congregation erupted in applause. But he was most aware of Isadora bouncing excitedly in the front pew. Finally part of a complete family. The reception in the church basement featured Mrs. Henderson's famous apple cake, Widow Johnson's cornbread, and enough casseroles to feed the county. More importantly, it represented acceptance. These people were welcoming Valentina not despite her past, but because they'd witnessed her present character. Speech, called out Tom Brady, the town's longtime mayor. Cornelius rose reluctantly, unused to public speaking. But looking at his new wife and daughter, the words came easily. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. Then a hungry little girl changed everything. He smiled at Isadora, who beamed back at him. Her mother taught me that second chances aren't given, they're earned through courage and love. Today, I'm the luckiest man in Millbrook Valley. The applause was thunderous, but Cornelius only had eyes for Valentina. She was crying openly now, not from sadness but from overwhelming gratitude. That evening, in the expanded cabin Cornelius had spent weeks renovating, they tucked an exhausted Isadora into her new bedroom larger than the cottage room with hand-painted furniture and shelves for her growing collection of books. "Thank you," Valentina whispered as they stood in the doorway watching their daughter sleep. "For what?" "For seeing us. For believing we deserved better. For giving us a home." Cornelius pulled her close, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his side. "You gave me life again. I should be thanking you." Their first year of marriage proved that fairy tales could exist even in remote mountain valleys. Valentina's intelligence and organizational skills made her indispensable at the mill, while Cornelius's metalworking reputation spread beyond Millbrook. Orders poured in for his decorative ironwork gates, weather vanes, and intricate fireplace screens that commanded premium prices. More importantly, they'd created something neither had experienced before, a partnership of equals. Cornelius consulted Valentina on business decisions, while she sought his opinions on everything from Isadora's education to household matters. They'd learned to fight fairly passionate disagreements followed by equally passionate reconciliations. "Papa." "Corny, look." Isadora burst into the workshop, holding up a slate covered in careful cursive. At 8, she was reading at a level that impressed even the schoolmaster. Her intelligence clearly came from Valentina, but she'd inherited Cornelius's steady determination. "Beautiful handwriting, Sparrow." He set down his hammer to examine her work properly. "Your mama teach you those fancy loops?" "She says proper. Penmanship opens doors." Isadora parroted Valentina's frequent lesson with unconscious pride. Indeed, Valentina had thrown herself into preparing their daughter for a future beyond Millbrook Valley's limited opportunities. She'd somehow acquired advanced textbooks, teaching Isadora mathematics, geography, and even basic French during their evening lessons. "Speaking of your mama," Cornelius said, "where is she?" "Talking to that fancy lady from the city." Isadora's nose wrinkled with confusion. "They're using big words I don't understand." Cornelius found Valentina in their parlor entertaining a well-dressed woman he didn't recognize. Both looked up as he entered, and he caught the tail end of what sounded like a serious conversation. "Mrs. Ashworth, I trust you'll consider our proposal carefully," the stranger was saying. She had the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, perhaps a teacher or government official. After their guest departed, Valentina sat heavily in her rocking chair, looking troubled. "What was that about?" Cornelius asked, settling onto the sofa. "Her name is Margaret Thornton. She runs a private academy for girls in Philadelphia." Valentina's fingers worried her wedding ring. Someone told her about Isadora's academic abilities. "She's offering a full scholarship." Cornelius felt the world tilt slightly. Scholarship for what? Education. The kind that would prepare her for college, maybe even a professional career. Teaching, perhaps, or medicine. The opportunity was extraordinary and terrifying. Isadora would receive advantages neither parent had ever dreamed of. But she'd also be hundreds of miles away, immersed in a world of privilege they could barely imagine. "What did you tell her?" "That we discuss it as a family." Valentina's voice held careful neutrality, but Cornelius could read the conflict in her eyes. She wanted this chance for their daughter while simultaneously dreading the separation. That evening, They presented the opportunity to Isadora with appropriate gravity. Her initial excitement, I'd live in a real city, gradually gave way to uncertainty as she grasped the implications. How long would I be gone? She asked in a small voice. The program runs 4 years, Valentina explained gently. You'd come home for summer holidays and Christmas. Isadora looked between her parents, seeking guidance from the adults who'd become her entire world. What do you think I should do? Cornelius's instinct was to keep her close, to protect her from the complexities and potential disappointments of the wider world. But Valentina's gentle squeeze of his hand reminded him that love sometimes meant letting go. We think you should choose what feels right in your heart, he said carefully. Either way, we'll support you completely. The decision consumed their household for weeks. As they weighed opportunity against family bonds, the answer came unexpectedly during Sunday service. Reverend Whitmore was delivering a sermon about talents and stewardship when Isadora suddenly sat straighter in the pew between her parents. I want to go, she whispered urgently, but not forever. I want to learn everything I can and then come back to help our town. Cornelius felt his heart swell with pride and break simultaneously. At 8 years old, their daughter had already grasped something many adults never learned. That privilege carried responsibility to serve others. The next months passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Valentina sewed appropriate clothing for Philadelphia's climate and social expectations, while Cornelius crafted a small jewelry box with hidden compartments for Isadora's treasures. They used their savings to buy proper luggage and the books Margaret Thornton recommended for advanced reading. Most importantly, they had countless conversations about staying true to herself while adapting to new circumstances. Valentina shared stories of her own youth among educated people, teaching Isadora proper etiquette without losing her natural warmth. Cornelius emphasized the value of hard work and treating everyone with respect, regardless of their station. Remember, Valentina said during one of their evening talks, education is a tool, not a badge of superiority. Learn everything you can, but never forget where you come from or who you are. The night before Isadora's departure, they held a special family dinner featuring all her favorite foods. She was excited but nervous, chattering about Philadelphia one moment and clinging to her parents the next. I'm scared I'll forget you, she confessed as Valentina tucked her into bed. Impossible, Cornelius assured her from the doorway. We're part of you now, just like you're part of us. Distance can't change that. At the train station, half the town gathered to see Isadora off. The little girl who'd once collapsed from hunger now stood straight and proud in her new traveling dress, carrying herself with dignity that made the adults smile through their tears. Margaret Thornton, who'd arrived to personally escort her new student, seemed impressed by the community support. You've raised a remarkable child, she told Cornelius and Valentina. When the train whistle blew, Isadora threw herself into her parents' arms one final time. I love you both, she said fiercely. I'll make you proud. You already have, Sparrow, Cornelius whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You already have. As the train disappeared around the mountain bend, Cornelius and Valentina stood hand in hand on the platform. Other parents might have felt empty with their child gone, but they felt oddly complete. They'd given Isadora roots and wings, everything good parents should provide. The walk home was quiet but not sad. They'd enter a new phase of their marriage now, rediscovering each other without the daily responsibilities of active parenting. It felt like a second beginning rather than an ending. No regrets? Cornelius asked as they reached their cabin. Valentina smiled, the expression radiant with certainty. None whatsoever. We've built something beautiful together. That night, they made love with renewed passion, celebrating not just their physical connection, but their partnership in creating a future that honored both love and opportunity. 4 years passed like seasons, each marked by Isadora's letters, describing her academic achievements, new friendships, and growing sophistication. She returned each summer, and Christmas transformed yet fundamentally unchanged, bringing stories of Philadelphia while eagerly resuming her place in Millbrook Valley's rhythms. Meanwhile, Cornelius and Valentina's marriage deepened into something rich and complex. They'd weathered the minor storms all couples face: disagreements about money, in-laws, and future plans, emerging stronger and more committed. Valentina had become the mill's unofficial manager, while Cornelius's metalworking had evolved into genuine artistry. Their modest cabin had grown into a comfortable home filled with books, music, and laughter. The biggest surprise came during Isadora's final summer before graduation. Now 12 and poised on the edge of young womanhood, she announced her intentions over Sunday dinner. "I've been accepted to the Teachers' College," she said proudly, "but I've decided to come home after graduation and establish a school here." In Millbrook Valley, Cornelius nearly choked on his coffee. "Here? But darling, the opportunities in Philadelphia will still exist if I change my mind," Isadora finished calmly. "But there are children in our mountains who deserve the same chances I've had. I want to be the person who gives them those chances." Valentina reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Are you certain? This is a big decision." "I'm certain." Isadora's smile was radiant with purpose. "Besides, I've learned something important in Philadelphia. Home isn't a place you outgrow, it's a place you grow into." The wisdom of those words struck both parents silent. They'd worried about losing their daughter to the wider world, never imagining she might choose to enrich that world by returning home. 2 years later, the Millbrook Valley School for Advanced Learning opened in a building Cornelius had designed and largely constructed himself. Isadora, now 14 but mature beyond her years, proved to be a natural teacher. Her pupils ranged from basic literacy students to promising scholars destined for colleges back east. On the school's dedication day, Margaret Thornton herself arrived to witness what her former student had accomplished. She found Isadora confidently leading a mathematics lesson for children whose parents could barely write their own names. "Remarkable," she murmured to Valentina, who was serving refreshments to the gathered families. "I've never seen someone so young command such respect." "She learned early that respect is earned, not given," Valentina replied, watching their daughter with undisguised pride. The celebration that evening brought together everyone who'd played a role in the Ashworth family story. Reverend Whitmore offered a blessing over the new school. Jonas Fletcher spoke about second chances and community support. Even Madame Cordelia attended, now a respectable boarding house proprietor after Millbrook Valley's economic growth had eliminated the need for her previous establishment. As the evening wound down, Cornelius found himself on the school's front porch with his wife and daughter, watching fireflies dance above the valley they all loved. "Any regrets?" he asked Valentina, echoing his question from years earlier. She leaned against his shoulder, solid and warm after all these years together. "Only that it took a starving little girl to bring us together." "No," Isadora interjected softly. "It took love. The rest was just details." Looking at his family, his brilliant daughter who'd chosen service over personal advancement, his remarkable wife who transformed herself while transforming him, Cornelius understood that some stories have no ending because they're really beginnings. Every choice they'd made, from that first bowl of soup to Isadora's decision to return home, had been motivated by the same force: love that creates more love, kindness that multiplies itself, hope that refuses to surrender. In the distance, the church bell chimed midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of another. The Ashworth family stood together under the stars, complete in their imperfect perfection, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Their love story had become a family story, which had become a community story, each chapter building on the last, each character essential to the whole. In a small mountain valley where dreams were supposed to be limited, they discovered that love knows no boundaries at all.